Our next speaker is Prof. Maria Frahm-Arp. She is the Executive Director for the University of Johannesburg Library. And Professor Maria has been the Executive Director for the Library and Information Center at the university here since March 2018. She's edited 2 books, she's published 2 monographs, and has written over 35 articles and book chapters. She currently serves on a variety of national and international library boards, as well as the Association for Commonwealth Universities Research Support Committee. She's regularly asked to be a keynote speaker at national and international library conferences and webinars. I would like you to help me welcome her as she comes on stage, as she is going to be talking to us on how to reshape your HR strategy in light of AI, and artificial intelligence is here to stay. So what does this mean for us who are looking for those things that we could cattle? Prof. Maria, over to you. Let's give a round of applause.
Morning, everybody, and thank you all so much for coming and joining us today. So I reshaped the title a little bit as I was working on this presentation because I want to look at 3 things today: thinking, feeling, and experiencing AI, and what is its impact for us in libraries. So which of these images do you think is not generated by an AI? So which image is not generated by an AI? Any guesses? The middle one, I got a vote. The far right got a vote. Anybody else? None of them? All of them? Right. So well done to some of you, because all the images are generated by an AI. So the point for putting these images up is for 2 reasons. One, the question that I asked which of these images was not shaped by an AI, and that actually segues into the kinds of questions that we ask. So very often when we are working with these tools, are we actually asking the right types of questions? And secondly, how do our perceptions of the world shape the way in which we work with technology? And that's really one of the things that I want to look at with you today. What I want to do is suggest that, firstly, when we talk about artificial intelligence, we're talking about a huge array of different things. And we're not going to look at all of that today. I'm going to pick up on a few of these different aspects of AI and how we can use them or are using them in our different libraries. But before we begin, I would like to ask that we divide ourselves into 3 big groups. The first group, I think, will be the blue group, and that's all of you sitting up until that poll. And then we're going to have the yellow group, which is everybody up until the cameras, etc. And then we're going to have the red group, which is all of you this side. And then we're going to have the green group, or the lime group, which is all of you online. So I was being a little bit creative and said, red, yellow, blue, who are you? And on the slide is lime, that's you who are online. Okay, with that little rhyme, what I'd like to ask you to do in your different groups, so remember which group you're in, to take out your phones and to use your phone or your computer, whichever, and look for any AI platform to answer some of these questions. So if you are in the yellow group, you are going to be using any type of AI platform to ask the question, how will AI change libraries? If you are in the blue group, you want to ask, how can you use AI to search for information? And if you are in the red group, you want to ask, what are the disadvantages of using AI? And if you are online, you want to ask an AI platform, what do most people think about AI as a search engine? So if you can remember which group you're in, very well done. For those of you online, it's much easier. And what I'd like you to do is to take out your devices, ask it a question, and then speak to the people at your table. You've already introduced yourselves to each other, so it's probably going to be easier to pick up a conversation and share what did your AI platform say. If you are online, just put it in the chat and see what other people are thinking. So you have about a minute to do this because I think some of you have already started. Just choose it. If you've forgotten what color you are, just choose any color. It doesn't matter too much. Right, and once you've come up with an answer, start sharing what the platform is telling you. Okay, so share with each other, what did your AI platform tell you? And if you don't have a partner, you maybe want to move to a table where there is somebody to chat to. Okay, I'm sorry to have to cut the conversation short, but we, as always, are short of time. So the big question I really want to ask is, how did you feel when asked to do the exercise? How did you feel when asked to do this exercise? Okay, perhaps some people will be brave and say they felt excited that the person at the front was not going to talk at them for a whole 30 minutes, but was letting them play with their devices. So who felt excited by that? Put up your hands. Okay, a couple of cool, excited people. Who felt anxious by the question, take out your device and do something? Who felt anxious? Right, I've got a couple of honest people, right? Who felt somewhat overwhelmed? I'm not sure how to do this. Am I going to do it quickly enough? Can I work well on this device? Who felt overwhelmed? No, everybody didn't. Fantastic. And who felt super comfortable doing this exercise? Right, so quite a fair number of you felt comfortable, which is fantastic. When you think about this, and you think about your knowledge around generative AI platforms, for those of you in the room, most of you had some basic knowledge. You didn't feel particularly overwhelmed. You knew what we were talking about. You were able to get on and do the exercise quite quickly. What I personally found interesting was how much faster everybody in the room was able to do this than if I had asked the question a year ago. So a year ago, by the time I stopped, you would not, most of you have started doing the talking because you would have still been struggling to get onto a platform. So what I want to do in my talk today is really talk about 3 different zones when it comes to talking about AI and the people that we work with and the people that we serve in libraries. The first one is the yellow part, and that is your head. What do you know? How familiar are you with these platforms? The second one is your emotions, your emotional responses. And so you notice that I've been asking a lot of questions about how you feel. Because one of the big things with technology is that we actually all feel emotions around technology. We pretend we don't, and that raises anxiety levels. And so we start to have stress from our technology. And then the blue area is our physical reactions. Sometimes people actually physically feel their stomach clench when they're asked to do something. Or there's a real sense of relief. I can do this. I know how to do this. This is going to enable me. All 3 of these things are always working when you are interacting with any type of AI. But what we tend to do is focus only on the head part. But if we are going to have successful integrations with these types of technologies, we've got to remember that we ourselves, our colleagues, the students that we work with, and if we're in an academic environment, then the lecturers that we engage with, actually all engage with these technologies on 3 different levels. So sometimes you may have the most brilliant information, but it is delivered in such a flat way that nobody feels anything and everybody falls asleep. Or you might have such amazing information that just does not connect in any way with people. So what was very interesting in the talks we had before I got up, we've talked about spot, and it was interesting how Brian asked the question, can you cuddle it? We want to have emotional connections with the things around us. And that's one of the things that makes the AI world confusing. And it's confusing on a deep level that we often don't talk about, because things like robotics, the more time you spend with Spot, the more of a relationship you begin to have. And if we spoke German, it would be easy because we could use the neutral with it. But we don't, so we're stuck with the he, she, it thing, whatever. And then it becomes a he, or it becomes a she. Our physical reactions are just as important. And if we are going to be working with students and with our staff members, what is the anxiety and stress doing to people? How are people actually embodying and feeling the very presence of these different things? Now, it's wonderful these days because you have all sorts of amazing AI platforms that can help you deal with your stress and do yoga and do all sorts of fantastic things. And that is also part of what we should be sharing with our colleagues and our students. AI is not just this one little thing that you do at work. The problem is that it bleeds into every part of your life. And how are we going to work positively with it? So, if we're going to work with AI and use it in the places where we work, the first thing I think is that we need to become much more sensitive to people's emotions around AI. Get to know what people feel about AI, not just what they think about it. Every study that is kind of worth its salt around pedagogy, about learning, will tell you that people's emotions are generally the number one block to their ability to learn something. It's not lack of information. It's the emotional connection they have to something. And if people feel stressed or angry or worried that this is going to take away their jobs, there's no ways that they are going to engage with this tool. So get to know what people fear about AI, what excites them about it. And so how does one do this? And how does one do this for students? So because I'm not the greatest believer in long, boring talks, I'm going to invite you back into your groups to just discuss what do you think would be one thing your division or your library or your institution could do to find out either what students or people that you work with feel about AI. And with that, you can ask yourselves, have we ever asked the question, what do people feel about AI? So once again, you've got about 3 seconds to do this exercise in. So it's what you can think up on the spot. Off you go. Share away. So remember, the question is, how do we find out what the students and the people that we work with feel about AI? Okay, so I'm sorry I have to interrupt again because of lack of time. And I'm sure that it will be great to continue some of these conversations over tea. But just one of the things you could do in your organization is put out something as simple as this little picture. Maybe take out the hungry one and thirsty. And just ask people anonymously to tick 3 of the boxes that sum up what they feel when they hear about AI. But is there any group that wants to share what they came up with? Excellent idea. You are presuming that they know how to use a QR code and scan. Yeah. Yes, the back. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yes, exactly. So it's not a difficult thing to do. It's just not something we generally think about doing. So we live in a world in which AI kind of comes into every aspect of our world. It even comes into art. And very often we think of art, poetry, literature, as those are the things that humans really do. But now AI is even coming into this area. So when there is a sense of unease, what is this AI going to do and how is it going to take away my job? I think this is a very real thing we have to keep in the back of our minds or at the front of our minds when we think about AI and the people that we work with. The next one is, how do we develop our understanding and knowledge of AI? So let's have a look at what's out there. And of course, as we look at these different things, you think about what your clients need and what are our skills within our different spaces. So the first is virtual reality is one of those wonderful AI spaces. And now you say to me, but we don't have a budget for virtual reality. So the first thing is when you see these big buzzwords and you hear about these amazing things that are possible, as a library, what is your key job? Your key job is to provide the resources for your institution. So you may not have the budget for a virtual reality room in the traditional sense of your budget. But do you really need all the books that you are buying? Or is buying virtual reality and starting a small lab with some software not as important a way of sharing information with students? So I think there's a lot of creativity that we all need to do, and we need to think of ways in which we speak to our institutions about how we spend our money and what we spend it on. This is a virtual reality lab where the students who are studying medicine are learning to work on a patient. You can imagine how much safer this is, and obviously a very real and tactile experience for the students. The second is maker spaces with our 3D printing and all the amazing things that we can do with that. But here, one of the things that I don't see coming up enough in the literature is the power of the tactile learning experience. So when you actually see something, you learn about it in a very different way. So if you are learning about the pyramids in Egypt because you are doing history, how cool would it be to print out those to scale and actually feel and see what this could look like? So I think this kind of learning, this learning in 3D quite literally, can be taken across all our different disciplines and is not just something that sits with the engineering students. Perhaps engineering students are the ones that find this the most cool, but I'm sure we can get some history students just as enthusiastic. The next are the different generative AI platforms. Now, I've moved on a little bit quickly, but you look at these different things and then you go, but Prof. Maria, we don't have the expertise in our library. And so here again, I would say you probably have a variety of people who are really keen to learn. Why stick in the traditional sense of what jobs should be? Do you really need all the circulation staff you currently have? Or is this not an area where some people could be retrained and move into perhaps being the technicians in the virtual reality lab? I'm not saying that they're going to be the managers of the lab, because as we have found out, You definitely need somebody with a good degree in computing or computer science or something in that area. But you need people to help the students. So while these different things on one level need a lot of expertise in your staff, there's also a lot of helping students on the ground. And here we can reimagine a variety of different jobs. When we look at generative AI, we come back to the question I asked right at the beginning. Which of these pictures was not generated by AI? And that is one of the key mistakes we all make when using AI. We use the wrong questions. Why? Because most people using these platforms are not librarians and have not been trained in how to work with prompts. So I believe that the generative AI space is a space where we need librarians as much as we've ever needed them before, if not more, because we need those skills in order to be able to use these platforms. And so many of these platforms are free. As we go through these next 2 days, we're going to talk a lot about the ethics of these platforms and how we use them. But I think it's important that our students who leave university and our learners who leave school have got some understanding of these platforms and how positive they can be, but also how negative they can be and how they can give you the wrong information. And then these platforms do wonderfully creative things. Here I think about researchers and how wonderful it is to create a really cool graph, to create a really wonderful presentation. And we are not yet using these kinds of AI nearly enough. And here again, librarians can be at the forefront of learning how to use one of these packages well, and then supporting the community that you work with in order to also learn how to use it. Finally, natural language processing. This is things like text data mining. Atlas TI is moving in this direction. And this is where a lot of the work that we do sits, doing things like sentiment analysis with text data mining. This is going to be a new area, I think, where many libraries are going to move into, and providing the kind of research support for our researchers who are going to need to do much more research in these different areas and using these different types of tools. Again, I think my take-home message is try not to do everything. Try and find what people are particularly interested in, and then try and get one person or two people to really become your specialists in that area in your library. So I've just listed there, to make it nice and easy, the kind of things that we are all busy talking about and working with. So how do you develop your understanding? I've talked about the different things that are out there. What we've done at UJ that's been incredibly successful is create task teams. So we have a particular task team that is looking at which of the generative AI platforms is the most useful, because they do different things. So you need to teach students to use different platforms for different parts of their research. Then our fabulous publishers and vendors have lots of amazing training sessions, and I'd really encourage people to join those. Understand the needs of your clients. Don't try and do everything. What is the most critical need amongst your students or your learners? And then fill that gap. Everything looks exciting. Everything is sexy. But the only thing you will get funding for is the thing where you can say to your institution, if we put a little bit of resources into this, we will solve a critical problem. And very often it's not put new resources, it's redirect the resources we have. And then, as I say, understanding the platforms and what they do, and breaking it all down into bite-sized sessions. Start playing on these platforms. Have fun with them. And find out what you enjoy doing. And then make that the thing that you become good at. Because we all have different talents. So we don't have the time, but the slides will be shared with you afterwards. And what I'd really suggest that you do is in your organizations, think about what is the problem we want to solve, who are the people that are involved, and which is the tool that we need in order to do this. And then in all of it, explore, how do you feel? What excites you? What physically gives you a reaction? What do you feel? Yes, I can do that. I'm excited about this. Or that scares me. And then my advice would be, let people who feel excited about something run with that. And where people really feel overwhelmed and frightened, don't push them. Take it in bite-sized chunks. So allow people to explore, allow people to fail fast and fail forward. Do what you're interested in and do what makes you feel good. Those would be my top 5 tips for how do you bring AI successfully into your organization in a way that people don't feel overwhelmed, don't want to run away, and don't feel that this is all too difficult to do. Remember that we are human beings. We are not Spot. We don't get the license to feel or the license to dance. We do that anyway. So as we think about AI and think about the people that we serve, the people that we work with, how do we make sure that we are looking at ourselves and all of these people in a holistic way, where we recognize that we feel, we think, and we behave, and all of these things are important as we relate to and respond to this ever-growing, very exciting, rather overwhelming new world that we live in. Thank you all very much.